Well, Michael, my message to the political opposition in this country would be don't fall for it again. I mean, we've seen this for a decade with Donald Trump. Issue for issue, people will say, is Donald Trump caving? No, he's in a strategic retreat. Now, I wouldn't say it's that strategic. He's never that strategic, but you see Trump do this all the time. It's oversimplification to say it's taco, that Trump always chickens out.
Right.
What's more accurate is that he retreats, he recalibrates, and he goes in harder. I mean, think of this as like bob and weave autocracy, Michael. We saw it with tariffs. We've seen it with Greenland. We've seen it over the years when he talks about election theft. We've seen it with him talking about locking up his enemies. Sometimes he's joking, then all of a sudden he's not joking, and then he retreats, and then he goes in really hard. So on immigration, what I would say is we are seeing one of those things right now. The temperature got too hot. Donald Trump didn't like the imagery on TV, and so he's saying, look, we'll dial it back a little bit because I know if I do that, people are going to cave to me, and they're going to think, like they always do, that I'm going to be in permanent retreat and I'm not going to do anything else. Now, I will say about Tom Homan, we're talking about a lesser of evils situation here, but Tom Homan at least is saying some of the right things, that he wants to focus on criminal aliens. And this administration has shifted to 90% of the people it detains have no criminal record whatsoever. That would be great if they followed through on that. But again, as you note, Michael, we should not just trust that. The opposition should not fall for it here because the underlying facts have not changed. U.S. government policy is basically still to designate the political opposition as domestic terrorist groups. They're still pushing that. And until they start actually rescinding some of these policies and making dramatic changes, you can assume it's going to be business as usual. They're going to come back harder again.
Mm-hmm. Tim, part of the head fake is that they're now talking about, supposed criminals who are in county jails, a lot of talk around sanctuary cities. If that is actually what this administration was interested in, they could have made that the priority on day one. They could have litigated this. That would have been the reasonable path forward. They never needed to put thousands of boots on the ground. To me, it is a tell, which is it wasn't about order. It was about terror and it was about chaos. So the fact that they are now downshifting to talking about actual criminals feels to me like they are telling on themselves.
For sure, Alicia. And I think the biggest tell is in Maine, as you guys alluded to in the intro here, right? For starters, it was absurd for them to be in Maine to begin with. It's not as if Maine is this huge entry port for fentanyl and cartel crime. It's the whitest state in the country. There is not a lot of immigration into Maine. Like, they went there because Maine is another place that happens to have a Somali community, and that advanced their narrative and their smear and their lies about the Somali Americans. But then they pulled out. Why? Did they accomplish their mission? Did they achieve any goals? No. They have a Republican senator that is the head of the Senate Appropriations Committee that they need to pass their budget, is a senator from Maine, and she realized that this was a disaster for her politically. This might work in Alabama and Texas and Florida, but it doesn't work in Maine. And if she was going to survive her election in November, she needed these guys out, and so they pulled out. I mean, that is the tell. It's totally political. There was no national security or homeland security interest in Maine. They went in for a political reason. They came out for a political reason. So, that's number one. And number two, I don't know that they can change even if they want to. I think that's the other important point here. I agree with a lot of what Miles said about how this is a strategic retreat, but how they're going to keep coming back stronger. I'd add on top of that, this DHS has a budget that's bigger than the U.S. Marine Corps. Like, they've hired all these agents all over the country. You read stories in Montana, stories here in Louisiana, stories in Colorado, these horror stories of random ICE agents acting inappropriately. All those folks are still working. What is Tom Homan going to do? It's not like they're going to have all these ICE agents they've hired sit around, eating donuts all day. Like, they're going to be out there. Donald Trump doesn't have control over all these people. Neither does Stephen Miller. Like, they have created this massive bureaucratic behemoth that has an impunity to act against the rule of law and to go harass people. And that's going to continue to happen, even if they do try to dial it down 10% for a little while in Minnesota till the heat, till the heat dies down.
Look, here's the thing, and we talked about this on our little group chat call that we have every day at 3 p.m. And you cannot have it both ways. So either this is about immigration enforcement or it's not. Tom Homan is saying, yeah, there'll be a drawdown if they meet our conditions. Well, I think we need to ask the question, well, what are the conditions? The conditions are complying with what Pam Bondi laid out, because one of those conditions was handing over the voter rolls. The government of Minnesota has already said they're not going to do that. One of the conditions is is not being a sanctuary city anymore. One of the conditions is working with DHS to make sure people who have committed heinous crimes and who are undocumented are deported, but they already do that. So I think that we have to really, they're saying all the right things, but they're not doing anything different. On Monday, what day was this? Monday, I believe, Governor Walz was on NPR, Minnesota Public Radio, and he was asked about, he talked about his conversation with Donald Trump and this situation around detainees and people who have committed crimes. Take a listen to what he had to say.
This is not ICE enforcement. This is not targeted work. We've done that together. Look, if we have someone here who, whether they are documented or not, if they're a criminal, we work with our federal partners to get them off the streets. And I think the local media did a wonderful job of showing this. They're out there like grandstanding, taking credit for people that we arrested a long time ago. I don't think President Trump knew that we honored detainers from folks leaving prison. I truly don't believe. And I think once he heard that from me, he's like, well, that's helpful.
But then why today is Tom Homan doing a press conference saying, well, if they would just work with us? This is what I'm saying, Miles. I think that we are being gaslit here. And there is nothing, no actions have been taken to me that actually suggest that anything different is actually going on. They're making an optical change. They're trying to address the optics because the optics are bad for them. But the tactics are still very much so the same.
Well, and not even them, Simone. They're bad for Donald Trump, because here's the mistake I think people keep making. Real talk here. Democrats, the political opposition, any of us, we're not dealing with a government here. We are dealing with a gangster. We are dealing with one person. We're not engaging with an administration with all these moving parts that's trying to form a policy. We're dealing with one man. And everything centers around the impulses of that leader. I mean, look no further than what just happened in Venezuela. What did the Washington Post tell us? Donald Trump basically went into Venezuela because the leader was dancing in a way, making fun of him. That's ultimately what it came down to. The impulses of this man are determining everything. And if you think I'm wrong, look at how Minnesota started. Minnesota started with Donald Trump in December saying what he used to say to us in private, that he thought people from Somalia are garbage. Then, over Christmas, he sees a YouTube video that sort of backs up his view. And then there's a scandal about accounting at Somali American kindergartens in Minnesota, which is apparently a reason to send 3,000 people in. And then 2 U.S. citizens are dead. And Donald Trump is sitting next to the Oval Office in the little room next to it, and he's watching TV and saying, gosh, this doesn't look good that they're assassinating people on all fours. We should dial it back. This is all about him. It's all about his impulses. And until then, until there's dramatic change where he's actually rescinding policies, any of these changes are just a lot of lipstick on a lot of pigs.